Let's be blunt. The phrase sugar baby is arguably one of the most successful marketing triumphs of the 20th century. It's a beautifully crafted, socially palatable euphemism that sanitizes one of the most ancient and raw transactions known to humanity. It's a linguistic shield, a powerful piece of cognitive camouflage designed to allow everyone involved, the provider, the recipient, and even us, the observersto, feel more comfortable with the stark, economic reality of the contract being signed. If you think that sounds harsh, it's because you haven't truly confronted what this world is built on. It's not built on romance. It's built on a power differential so vast, it's almost geological. To understand this, we have to look at the numbers not as abstract data, but as a map of power. Data aggregated from the largest platforms in this multi-billion-dollar industry shows that the average sugar daddy is a man around 38 years old, commanding an annual income of approximately $250,000. Now, let's turn our attention to the other party in this contract. The average sugar baby is 25. Her income from this arrangement averages around $2,800 a month. And perhaps right now you're thinking, $2,800 a month? That doesn't sound right. That wouldn't even cover rent in New York City or Los Angeles. And you are absolutely correct. That $2,800 figure is a national average, a number that flattens a brutal economic landscape into a misleadingly simple statistic. In reality, the sugar economy is a tiered, market-driven system. The allowance in Manhattan, Miami, or San Francisco can easily soar to $5, $0, $10, $0 a month, or even higher, depending on the level of expectation and the credentials of the baby. In a smaller city in the Midwest, it might be $500. This isn't a flaw in the data. It's the most important piece of it. It proves that this is a market, subject to the laws of supply, demand, and geographic cost of living. It underscores the central truth. This is compensation, not affection. The relationship is anchored, from its inception, by this chasm of economic and experiential power. The money that represents a lifeline for Herapath away from crippling debt, a way to afford a future, is often a rounding error in his monthly budget. This isn't a partnership of equals. It is a relationship of profound structural dependency. And to analyze it without acknowledging this is an act of intellectual dishonesty. Before we proceed with the psychological dissection, it's crucial to place this phenomenon in its proper context. The explosion of sugar dating isn't happening in a vacuum. It is a profound and desperate symptom of the economic anxieties haunting an entire generation. For millennials and Gen Z, the traditional pathways to stability have been eroded. They entered a workforce defined by the precariousness of the gig economy, stagnant wages, and the specter of automation. They are saddled with unprecedented levels of student loan debt, a national crisis amounting to over $1.7 trillion in the U.S. alone. The cost of housing has skyrocketed, pushing the dream of homeownership out of reach for millions. When you view it through this lens, the choice to enter a sugar relationship shifts from a question of dubious morality to one of grim, rational economics. For a young woman facing $80,000 in student debt and a job market that offers little security, an arrangement that eliminates that debt in 2 years doesn't feel like a moral compromise. It feels like a lifeline. It feels like the only logical move on a chessboard that has been rigged against her. Today, we're not just exploring a lifestyle. We're performing a psychological autopsy on a modern survival strategy. So if you're here for the unvarnished truth, for an analysis that will make you uncomfortable, subscribe. We're about to examine the hidden wounds that this strategy leaves behind. At the core of this entire dynamic is a psychological principle so fundamental it governs almost all human interaction: social exchange theory. In simple terms, we are all constantly, often subconsciously, weighing the costs and benefits of our relationships. In the sugar world, this subconscious calculus becomes a conscious, explicit contract. The sugar daddy is executing a transaction, He is exchanging his primary capital financial resources for a curated portfolio of assets he desires: youth, physical beauty, the performance of admiration, and intimacy free from the unpredictable entanglements of a conventional relationship. He is not seeking a partner to build a life with. He is seeking to purchase an experience, a service that simplifies the human need for connection into a predictable, controllable commodity. The sugar baby, conversely, is also a rational economic actor. She is leveraging her capital, what sociologist Pierre Bourdieu would call her cultural capital, her charm, her wit, her education, and her symbolic capital, her youth and beauty, which are highly valued in a patriarchal society, in exchange for the economic capital she lacks. To call her a passive victim is to deny her agency. To call her a liberated entrepreneur is to ignore the coercive economic pressures that often narrow her choices. She is a strategist operating in a system where her most valuable currency, as defined by the market, is her own self. This leads us to the first and most significant psychological cost: the immense burden of emotional labor, popularized by sociologist Arlie Russell Hochschild. This term refers to the work of managing your own emotions to create a desired emotional state in another person. It's the flight attendant's relentless smile, the customer service agent's practiced empathy. For the sugar baby, it is the job's primary function. It is the constant, draining performance of being fascinated by stories she has heard before, of laughing at jokes that aren't funny, of projecting adoration, gratitude, and unwavering positivity. It is the work of making another person feel powerful, desired, and important. As one former sugar baby articulated, "You are a living, breathing ego boost." Your job is to be his escape from his real life, which means you are not allowed to have a bad day. Your problems don't exist in that space. You are a mirror, reflecting back the best version of himself that he wants to see. This is not friendship. This is a high-skill, high-stress form of psychological performance. Over time, this intense labor can lead to a profound sense of burnout and, more dangerously, an alienation from one's own authentic feelings. When you spend your days performing an emotion, you can begin to lose the ability to recognize it in yourself when it's real. This relentless performance creates the perfect breeding ground for a severe case of cognitive dissonance. This is the state of intense mental discomfort that arises when a person holds two or more contradictory beliefs, or when their actions contradict their beliefs. For a sugar baby, life can become a minefield of dissonance. She might believe, "I am a smart, independent woman in control of my life," while her actions say, "I am feigning attraction to a man I find unappealing in order to pay my rent." The psychological friction this creates is immense. The brain, in its desperate attempt to resolve this pain, must create a new narrative, a justification. This is where the allure of the lifestyle comes in. The mind seizes on the external trappings of the arrangement, the luxury bags, the exotic trips, the fancy dinner stand, reframes them not as payment for a service, but as evidence of a glamorous and desirable life. This isn't a job, it's an experience. He's not a client, he's a mentor and benefactor. This narrative isn't just a lie. It's a vital psychological survival mechanism. Without it, the daily cognitive dissonance would be unbearable. It's the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine of the transaction go down. But the side effect is a slow and steady erosion of one's ability to see the reality of their own situation. To go even deeper, we can analyze this through the lens of attachment theory, a cornerstone of developmental psychology. Our early life experiences with caregivers shape our attachment style, our fundamental way of relating to others in intimate relationships. An individual with a secure attachment style, who grew up feeling safe and loved, is generally better equipped to seek out and maintain reciprocal, healthy relationships. However, individuals with insecure attachment styles may be unconsciously drawn to the dynamic of a sugar relationship. For instance, a person with an anxious, preoccupied style, who craves constant validation and fears abandonment, might initially find the clear terms and financial security of a sugar arrangement to be a soothing balm for their anxiety. The arrangement provides a tangible, quantifiable proof of their value. Conversely, a person with an avoidant, dismissive style, who fears true intimacy and emotional engulfment, might find the built-in distance and clear boundaries of sugaring to be the perfect way to have their needs for companionship and sex met without the perceived threat of a real relationship. The tragedy is that while the arrangement might feel comfortable for these insecure styles initially, it ultimately reinforces their core wounds. It teaches the anxious person that their worth is indeed conditional and transactional, and it allows the avoidant person to continue avoiding the challenging, vulnerable work of true intimacy. Thus far, our analysis has focused heavily on the psychology of the sugar baby. But to understand the full picture, we must turn our clinical eye to the other side of the contract. What is happening in the mind of the sugar daddy? To dismiss his motivation as simply a desire for sex with a younger woman is a simplistic and incomplete diagnosis. The reality is far more complex. A primary driver is an overwhelming need for control. A traditional relationship is inherently unpredictable. It requires compromise, vulnerability, and the acceptance that you cannot control another person's feelings or actions. The sugar arrangement is an elegant solution to this problem. It is, at its core, a relationship where the terms, conditions, and even the emotional responses are, in theory, guaranteed by a financial contract. It eliminates the risk of rejection and the messy work of emotional negotiation. The man doesn't have to earn her affection through his personality. He can purchase her performance of it. This provides a powerful, godlike sense of control that may be missing in other areas of his high-stress life. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the role of what psychologists call mortality salience, the deep, often unconscious anxiety related to the fact of our own death. For many men entering a midlife crisis, the physical signs of aging are a stark reminder of their own finitude. Engaging with a partner who is the embodiment of youth and vitality can act as a powerful psychological defense mechanism against these fears. It's a symbolic transfusion of youth, an illusion of stopping time. The young partner becomes a living testament to his own continued virility, power, and relevance in a world that is constantly moving forward. In some cases, this dynamic can also serve a more pathological need related to personality traits, particularly narcissism. Individuals with strong narcissistic traits have a fragile sense of self-worth and require constant external validation, known as narcissistic supply. A sugar baby, whose financial well-being is dependent on keeping her benefactor happy, is an almost perfect source of this supply. She provides unwavering admiration, validates his importance, and her dependency itself is a powerful affirmation of his power and superiority. Her role is to be a mirror reflecting back not who he is, but the grandiose image he has of himself. This brings us to the great, central debate that rages around this topic, a debate that often takes place within feminist discourse. Is this a form of female empowerment or a modern, insidious form of exploitation? The empowerment argument is compelling. Proponents argue that, in a capitalist, patriarchal society, a woman who uses the assets available to her, including her beauty and charm to achieve financial independence, is not a victim, but a savvy operator. She is taking control, setting her own terms, and refusing to be a victim of a system designed to keep her in debt and economically disadvantaged. From this perspective, she is a businesswoman, and her body and time are her capital. She is choosing her path with open eyes, preferring the explicit contract of a sugar relationship to the implicit, often unpaid emotional and domestic labor expected in many traditional relationships. The exploitation argument is equally powerful. Critics contend that true choice is an illusion when one is under severe economic duress. A choice made between paying your tuition and being homeless is not a free choice. This perspective argues that sugaring reinforces the most damaging patriarchal ideas, that a woman's primary value lies in her youth and beauty, and that these are commodities to be consumed by wealthy men. It creates a system where women are incentivized to defer their own ambitions and careers to become accessories in a man's life. Furthermore, it argues that this dynamic harms all women by reinforcing a culture that devalues female professional achievement while overvaluing female ornamental and sexual roles. This is the central, unresolvable paradox of sugaring. It can feel personally empowering for the individual woman who escapes debt, while simultaneously reinforcing a societal system that is broadly disempowering for women as a whole. This psychological and social complexity is what allows the entire industry to exist in a perpetual legal and ethical gray area. By meticulously avoiding the language of prostitution, never mentioning money for sex, always framing it as arrangements and mutually beneficial relationships, the platforms and participants shield themselves from legal repercussions. But this careful dance with language does not erase the fundamental questions. What happens after the sugar runs out? What are the long-term consequences when the arrangement ends, when youth fades, or when one party simply decides to move on? Anecdotal evidence from forums and blogs of ex-sugar babies paints a difficult picture. Many report a profound sense of disillusionment and a struggle to readjust to traditional vanilla dating. After being accustomed to a world of luxury and explicit exchange, the give and take of a normal relationship can feel unrewarding and confusing. There can be a deep-seated distrust of partners, a lingering question of whether affection is genuine if it is not accompanied by a tangible benefit. The commodification of the self can leave a lasting scar, making it difficult to offer intimacy freely and without calculation in the future. We have now completed our psychological audit. We have dissected the economic desperation, the emotional labor, the cognitive dissonance, the attachment wounds, the need for control, and the societal debate. Our final conclusion is this: the sugar relationship is the logical, albeit painful, symptom of a society grappling with vast economic inequality and the corrosion of traditional social contracts. It is a microcosm of a world where everything, including connection itself, is increasingly seen as a commodity to be bought and sold. To condemn the sugar baby as immoral is to ignore the economic desperation that often drives her. To condemn the sugar daddy as a predator is to ignore his own complex psychological landscape of loneliness, fear, and a need for control. A more difficult and more honest conclusion is to see the arrangement as a shared coping mechanism, a deeply flawed solution to a set of deeply flawed societal problems. The final, uncomfortable truth is not about them. It is about us. It is about the world we have built, a world where the gap between the haves and have-nots has grown so wide that it has become possible to lease another person's time, affection, and body as a luxury good. The ultimate question this phenomenon forces us to confront is not what they are doing, but what we, as a society, are becoming. And what is the price in dollars, but in humanity that we are all willing to pay?